Hello, hello, we are back. If you're wondering why I have this soft, intense intro music, nothing deep. It's because I haven't figured out what intro music I'm gonna use for this podcast. So you're basically living my best moments of creating this content on this platform with me. And aren't you so glad we're here? So this is Dr. Soy La Quesada, and I am with the podcast Two Kids, One Doctorate, in which I share stories about life. Sometimes they will be things that happened to me that day. Sometimes they'll be things that are happening in our world today, always centering my experiences and that of my kids as much as I could share about them. And funny enough, I was scrolling through TikTok and I found this person who it's telling their story about being the child of a mom blogger. So back in the day when blogging was popular, I mean it still is, but blogging with, like they blogged their whole life throughout the day. And so they were talking about that experience and how it affected them. So now I'm super, super like vigilant about, oh my God, am I posting too much? Like, am I saying too much about my kids? It's interesting when you begin to look at other perspectives and other points of views, how your point of view all of a sudden is like, wait a minute. Actually, let me just pull it back a little bit. Anywho, that's too long to say. Welcome and thank you for being here. And today I wanted to talk about names. What is in a name? A whole story is in a name. The story of how your name was chosen, the why, the who was in that room when they named you. Were you named after someone? Was your name a combination of two people's names or three people's names? Is your name a family name? What was in your family's heart and soul? Like, who was talking to them when they came up with like the name that was going to become your human identity? That story is so powerful. And I understand there are people whose name bring them bad memories. For them, it might remind them of a negative experience, and altogether might want to disassociate with the name because of family history, or disliking how they came to be that name, or feeling like they don't identify with that name. And I also understand that there are folks who shorten their name or use an alias to accommodate to people's lack of effort in pronouncing their name. And for you all in this bracket, I just want to say I want to encourage you to have folks try pronouncing your name and that they pronounce it, because they cannot colonize your name. There's so much power in a name that was given to you for all the reasons that it was given to you. So if you're shortening your name to accommodate to other people's lack of effort in pronouncing your name, I'd like you to reconsider that. I'd like you to reconsider and owning like your whole identity, to owning that whole name, owning all of that pronunciation that comes with it. Okay, feel empowered to do so. There is so much power in owning our names, especially for those that get to change their name. Beauty in a name that is loved and is appreciated and commemorated. The history you are carrying in your name is a whole story. The place, the people before you. There are details like where they were when they decided on your name, the reason or the purpose they saw in the name for you, the life you are giving that name, the purpose with which you live on this earth, right? Does it have something to do with your name? Have you ever asked yourself, I wonder how much of it is subconsciously or unconsciously all come from that birth name for me, right? Like, where does a lot of my personality, a lot of my confidence or lack of come from? The empowerment that someone else gave me, right, at birth. And it could also be that you decided to change your name now. And the power in choosing to go by a nickname or an alias. I'm not absolutely saying you should never do that. I mean, do what your heart feels is right, right? Just don't do it for other people. But if it's for you and you love your new nickname or shortened name or your alien, even choosing that new name, it gives you a new identity, one that is your own, one that was not made up by anyone before you, one that was not predicated according to what other people thought you were going to be on this earth. There is so much power in that also. Okay, so keep living your best life using whatever name it is you want. But I want you to remind you, and to also to remind you to reflect a little bit about what about you it's so held up on that name. What about you in your name sort of like carries you through life? Like, what are some tidbits of information that you know from how you were named or who named you or how it came about, that it is subconsciously part of who you are? Like, it's part of how you act, how you react to things, who you think you are in this earth, right? Like, when I snap my fingers, I'm like, who do I think I am? And I'm like, soy la Quesada, okay? So yeah, there's so much pride for me in my name. So I thought it'd be a great time to give you a little bit of history of my own birth name. My birth name is Zoila Pura Luz Quesada. Okay, and it has, my mom's maiden name at the end, which I often don't share. So my birth name is Zoila Pura Luz Quesada. So proud of this. My dad named me. My mama happened to call me a few minutes ago, and I wanted to know, because I had a feeling this is how it went. So I asked her, did my dad say this is gonna be this child's name? And did you say yes? And that's how it happened? And she said, yep, that's how it happened. He said, this is what it's going to be her name. And he went to get your birth certificate certified. And I thought to myself, okay, but were you okay with that? Mind you, my mom was 16. So at that point, I'm not sure what conversations happened. I don't know if she was even like, WTF, what's going on? I have a child. You know how when you give birth for that first time, you're like, oh my God, okay, so what does this mean? What is all of this? So yeah, so she's like, no, of course. And then she explained to me why she loved it. My first name, first of all, the Z is silent. I shouldn't say the Z is silent. The Z is an S sound in Spanish, in my Spanish, not in like Spain Spanish where the Z's are like Z's and the S's. No, Z is an S sound. And so Zoila, if you speak Spanish or know any Spanish, you might know that soy, spelled S-O-Y, also sounds like the first three letters of my name, Z-O-I. Remember that Z is an S sound, soy. It's pronounced the same way as soy, as in S-O-Y, which in Spanish is I am. Yes, soy, S-O-Y, is also soy, like soy milk. Yes, I know. Soy. S-O-Y translates to I am. So since the sound is soy in my name, that's really what it translates into, soy, right? I wish I could have asked my dad how he came to this, or like what in his mind was like, this is gonna be it, like this is gonna be like what she's gonna be named. So that's soy, right? So la, L-A, it's la. And in Spanish, the word la means the. So soy la, I am the. Okay? There's actually a joke with my name that says, soy la que lavo, soy la que friego, soy la que limpio, which translates literally into I am the one who does laundry, I am the one who washes dishes, I am the one that cleans. People thought it was funny. I never thought it was funny because it was my name. Of course I didn't like people making fun of my name. So anyways, so my name, my dad picked Zoila, which, funny enough, when you meet any Zoila, or if you yourself are a Zoila and you meet other people that know other Zoilas, oftentimes Zoila, it's like a 2 generations ago popular name, which makes sense because my dad is about 2 generations ago person. May his soul rest in peace. He passed away in 2018. But anyways, so that's that. So that's the story about that. I was gonna get into, oh my God, my dad died in 2018 and the things that happened in 2018, but that's definitely a story for another day. Okay, so Zoila, Pura Luz Quesada, right? So we went over the Zoila. So Pura Luz, my middle names are just popping. Like, Yes, I'm Dominican with two middle names, and I'm not saddened by that. I'm actually very happy that happened. My kids both have middle names. I didn't go overboard with two middle names, but I was very close. But I was like, no, Zoila, don't do it. Anyways, middle names are so important to me because they have been in my culture and my family. Like, for example, my mom has two middle names. I believe all my aunts have two middle names as well. So it's something that's very common within our family. And so pura is pura. Like, if you know Spanish pura, you know what pura means. For those that are listening and only speak English, pura translates, the literal translation is pure. Luz translates to light. So my full name is Soy la Pura Luz. So just take a moment. If Soy la means I am the, and Pura is pure, and Luz is light, yes, it translates into I am pure light, or I am the pure light. Do you understand how meaningful it was for me to grow up with this name? I often present with a chip on my shoulder, and I would not deny it. I wouldn't deny that it was probably part because my name is already telling me that I'm pure and that I'm light, right? So yes, I'm gonna show up like I'm all that. And what's the saying? I don't even know the saying. Let me stop acting like I know any sayings. I'm old and I'm like, what was like we used back in the 90s, which is not relevant anymore. So anyway, so yeah, so imagine growing up with this name, like Soy la Pura Luz. Of course, I was like, yes, like I'm living in all my glory with these names. Anyways, my dad was so clever. I am one of 9 kids. So my dad made 9 kids. My mother doesn't have 9 kids. My dad made 9 kids. I'm number 8. My dad has 5 children who are women. Again, may his soul rest in peace. 4 out of us women have the name Luz in it. Okay? So this is where the history comes of where these other 2 names. My first name was just so that it could actually go well with these other 2 very powerful middle names. And let me share the story behind that. My dad wasn't very in touch with his feelings, but the one thing I did know is that he loved and revered his mother. Luz is his mother's name. Luz is a name I carry with so much pride. Also, if you know anything about the Spanish language, you know Doña. If anyone is called Doña before their name, you know there's a lot of respect that goes into that person, right? Doña Luz. To this day, everyone refers to her as Doña Luz. She was the pillar of this family. My dad loved her. 4 out of the 5 women children that he had are named Luz or have Luz in their name. So I carry that ancestral like story with me. I carry what could have been her life, what, the struggles and the challenges that she of course lived through because of the times that she was living in. These were like very early times in Villa Tapia, and that's another story for another day, how they were actually considered like one of the few people that came to that town that weren't from there originally. But there's a lot to go with that, and family history, and how we're part colonizers and everything, all the fun stuff. And I say that sarcastically. So Luz is my dad's mom. He loved her, adored her. Passed away earlier in my infancy, so I didn't really get to spend any time with her. I don't know her. I don't even know if she ever met me. That's another question I should ask my mother. So yeah, that's where I got Luz. Love it. Love that name. And then there's Pura. Pura is my mom's mother, who is still alive, who's my heart. She's a queen in my eyes. My grandmother cannot do nothing wrong, okay? I know it's different when you're a grandchild than from when you're a child, because I know as a grandchild, I see nothing wrong with her. Her kids are different, right? Because she raised them, so they understand sort of like how tough she had to be. And of course, can you imagine raising 5 kids on your own, working your butt off to like make sure that they're getting fed, that they have a house over their heads, a roof over their heads, and all of that sacrifice and time and I'm sure tears and sweat that went into raising these kids, and in the ways that she just made it work. And And again, she's the pillar and the patriarch of this family. So, anywho, Pura. I'm wondering though, and as I'm saying all of this, my dad and my grandmother didn't get along. Okay? My dad, when he passed away, he was 91. Again, I need to get these numbers correct. But my dad, if he was still alive today, would be 10 years older than my grandmother. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. My dad would be 10 years older than my grandmother. Now, can you imagine being a mother to a teenager and seeing an old man that's older than you take your daughter from her house and marry her? Okay, so you can already know the drama. And my mom has never been really descriptive about the actual drama that she lived. And also, I think she's like really protective of that time in her life. And so I do respect that. However, what I want to know from my dad is like, okay, you already had drama with my grandma. And there must have still been a little bit of admiration and respect for my grandmother Pura. Because there's no way you're going to name your daughter Pura if you don't really actually like respect or admire this other woman, right? And he could have easily called me Soy La Luz, which sounds fabulous as well. But no, he said no, she's going to be Soy La Pura Luz. So there definitely is something that he didn't share or he wasn't really open about, but understanding that maybe, Pura was an important person or was going to be an important person in my life. And so he's like, yeah, of course she's going to be named Pura Luz. He's very creative. I wish I can share all of my other siblings' names with you, but I need their permission to do so. But they're fabulous. Like, they're so creative. I'm like, oh, I lost that gene with my kids. And I didn't get creative with their names because I'm like, my thing was like, they need to find things with their name on it. And long story short, my second child doesn't have a name that he can find anywhere. So I failed at being creative, and still didn't give my kids a name that they can find in their cup and a keychain. All right, back to my story. So not many people know this about me. And I kind of am chuckling inside. You're not seeing it because I went from not sharing anything about me to saying, you know what? Who cares? Like, I'm going to share my story. I'm going to share why my name. And not only that, there's a lot more things on this list of things that I'm going to be sharing with you. Because I think there's so much power in the in the story of your name, right? Think about the ancestors that are still with you every day as you walk on this earth with a name like the name you have. For example, when I walk around, I'm like, Soy La Pura Luz. I'm just like, whoa, it's a big name to fill too, right? The pressure's on. Like, I better fill this name. And subconsciously working your brain that way. Anyways, I do hope you are living in the purest form of what your name was intended for you. The intention that was put into your name either before you were born or after you were born, or if you go by a nickname or an alias, or you've shortened your name, or you've changed your name legally to something that you love, whatever that is, I hope you're like just walking in all of that glory and all of that represents you and all of that what that name represents for you and what it means for you. Today or tomorrow, depending what time you're listening to this episode, take a minute to ask someone in your family or any of your professional or social circles to share their name story. So much is learned from a person and a family's history when we ask how they were named, why their names were chosen. And now I say this with a little bit of a warning. You have to be careful how you ask this. You can't just go to anyone and be like, oh, today I'm interested in knowing why you were named that way, because not a lot of people are there in that space where they want to share. And some people might find it offensive when you ask such a question because they might feel that you're asking because you know of their particular race or their ethnicity or the way they look, they're all probably going to be suspicious as to why you're asking that. Make sure it's people that you're comfortable with asking, people that will share their story, but people that you also feel comfortable sharing your story with. And perhaps you can start by sharing your name story first, and then maybe they'll feel comfortable sharing their story with you. Remember, there's so much power in the name that was given to us or the name that we have chosen. Live in all of that power. Live in all of it. Live your best life today. Take care. Thank you for listening to Two Kids, One Doctorate, where you will hear many different things within the spectrum of me being a Latina, an immigrant, first generation, single mom, a doctorated person. I say doctorated as in like, doctorate with a D at the end. Professional, now life coach, consultant. And you'll hear stories that, will inspire you and will motivate you to be your best self. And then you'll hear some stories sometimes that will have you reflecting and thinking about how much awesomeness you have inside of you and how you need to share that with the world. So I'm here for you, and thank you so much for being here for me. Again, this is Dr. Quesada or Doctora Zoila, and thank you for listening to Two Kids, One Doctorate. Take care.